Hold on 1 second so we get that happening. There we go. Okay, so today is the 1st of December. Happy December, David. I'd like to introduce you to our master's degree students in healthcare. They're doing research methods module with me. And given them a little bit of background to look at your website, but do feel free if you want to go into a little more detail. Let me see, are you pinned? I'm not sure if I pinned for me. What does that do? There we go. I think that keeps you big on the screen. All right, so I'll hand over to David. Audience, David, do you want questions during the talk or at the end?
Probably at the end, but I don't mind being interrupted at all. No, it doesn't matter either way, really.
Okay, well, we'll go for the end. But guys, when you ask the questions, speak up because our microphone is a little small one here, and hopefully David will be able to hear you. If not, I can try to repeat the questions, David. So we are recording, so we'll hand over to David for our guest speaker presentation. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Skip. I think you've bulled me up a little bit with your description of my work and my credentials. So thank you very much for that. I should begin by saying that I don't consider myself to be an expert in research at all. Certainly not in research. Certainly not in research methodologies, but I would like to give you a little bit of perspective, which I hope you will find useful in your research projects. Just to begin by telling you a little bit about me, and maybe touching on some of the research projects or research work that I've done in the past to give you an idea. The first thing I want to say, in case I forget to mention it later on, when you're doing research, it's the same as if you're doing a teaching project. The most important thing is to understand what the learning outcomes of your project are. In other words, if you're doing research, there are situations where blue sky research, where you're just exploring a particular science or particular situation just to understand. But for the majority of research projects, I think it's important to have a learning outcome. What is it you want to achieve as a result of what you're doing? The second thing is to stress the importance of debriefing. That's extremely important, particularly when you're talking about research, which is subjective rather than objective. And by that I mean research which is objective was largely based on data that you collect during the research program. So your outputs of that are in terms of representing the data that you've collected in a way that is understandable. Subjective research is a little bit different, where you're researching people's opinions and the impact of things. But for all types of research, the important thing is to have a learning outcome. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an electrical engineer by background. I studied at Birmingham University in the late 1960s, early 70s. So that gives you an idea of how old I am. And after I graduated, I went into management with the Post Office Telecommunications. They'd given me a scholarship, so I was actually getting some money whilst I was at university. And I've always been more interested in people and behaviours, but I found that technology has played an enormous part in my life. Technology and games and gamification and simulation have been a very big part. So I will just take you through a quick, short journey through my for my career, really mainly focusing on where research has come into play. And the first real time it came into play was when I did a postgraduate course called the Diploma in Management Studies. And as part of that course, we had to do a research project. And the research project that I chose to do was based on how people how much people use their telephone. And what I wanted to establish was, were there any differences in the amount of telephone usage in different telephone areas in my region? So every telephone area has telephone exchange regions, and that's normally you know what region you're in by the landline number that you dial. If you've got a different landline number, it means that you are being served by a different telephone exchange. So my project was really trying to understand if there are any differences in telephone usage between different areas, and if there are, what are the likely reasons behind that, and what can you learn, or what actions can you take to take advantage of the data that you collect? So my research methodology involved choosing 40 domestic telephone numbers in each telephone area and collecting the telephone usage for each of those telephone numbers, and then aggregating them for the telephone district to see if there are any significant differences between how much people use their telephone in different areas. And if there is, what are the likely reasons? And the outcome of this project was that there were certain telephone regions which stood out in terms of the amount of telephone usage that there was for people phoning from home. And the common factor that all of these places had, and it might seem obvious now, the common factor was people use their phone more if they live away from home. So the biggest users of telephones were districts where the population wasn't indigenous. In other words, maybe it was a new village with a lot of people moving in from a different area. And because they'd all moved in from their hometown, they used the phone more. And this is particularly true. Just give you an example. In the Leicester telephone area, the district of Corby. You may have heard of Corby. Corby is in Northamptonshire, and it was a big steel town. And it grew as a result of people coming in from the steel industry in Scotland and in the northeast. So when people moved into Corby, they used the phone a lot more to keep in touch with their family. So that was interesting in itself, and there were statistical significantly differences in the usage. And although I can't claim for any responsibility for this, but one of the outcomes of that research, it could be argued, was the advertising strategy that British Telecom used. And it was based on a character called Busby, and it used the strapline "phone home." And so it was really trying to take advantage of this research outcome to generate more telephone traffic from people who were living away from home. So that was the first research project. The second research project was later on when I became a management tutor at the Post Office Management College. And it was my first experience of serious games. We had a game called Action Maze, which was used to train people within the telecoms industry on how to be a first-line manager, and it used proven management techniques to do that. But I did a little bit of a research experiment myself. And that was really to understand the role of body language and interpreting information. And so what I did was I recorded myself in different scenarios. And these scenarios were related to giving people staff interviews. So I recorded one bit with using my body language to try and indicate the ideal kind of interview situation for when you're giving a job review for a person. So it's about being empathetic and looking him in the eye and be sympathetic, etc. Then I did some other recordings where I simulated different situations. One was like an emergency situation. One was a bad tactic. So I was using body language that showed that I was bored, I was looking away, I was shuffling in my chair. And so what I did for the students was to play these video recordings with no sound. So they could only judge what the situation was from my body language. And so the learning outcome from that research exercise was to see if it actually changed their understanding and behavior and use of body language in different situations. So it was designed to make people more aware and sensitive of body language. So fast forward in my career, which has been all about technology, I worked for IBM for 5 years as a marketing executive. So I was selling mini computers and mainframe computers in business. Then I started my own business, which was based really on my experience of how people's use of technology was changing. And when I first started with IBM, people were buying computers mainly to save staff costs. So they were buying a computer usually for accounting purposes because it meant that the computer could make it less necessary for having a lot of people doing accounts. And that was when I first started. When I left IBM, I realized that people were investing in computers to give themselves competitive advantage, to be able to deliver new business benefits when they were delivering. So that took my career to gave me the idea of starting my own business, and I set up what's called the National Presentation Centre. My company was the first company in the UK to get a Centre of Excellence Award for PowerPoint presentations, and I was servicing a network of 100 different outlets for presentation services. And after that period was over, I went into academia, and I started working for De Montfort University as a project manager, building bridges between industry and education. And that in turn took me to become the founding director of the Serious Games Institute at Coventry University. And this is really where my involvement in healthcare came into play, because with health is a little bit different to a lot of research that people do, because of the importance of data in health research. Subjective analysis is important, but objective analysis using real world data to assess the impact of any initiatives that you take is absolutely critical. And the first health research project, health-related research project that I got involved in at the Serious Games Institute was with a video games company called Blitz Games, who were wanting to move away from, not necessarily move away, but have less reliance on video entertainment video games and create games which had a serious purpose. So the very first research project involved there was to establish whether you could use video game technologies to improve the education of paramedics. in training paramedics, it's quite a challenging thing to train paramedics, because you don't want to get them to train on living people usually, because of potential damage they might do. If they're not properly trained, they might, cause more problems than they solve. So the scenario that this research project was based on was an explosion in a city centre causing casualties, that the paramedic has to triage. And for those not familiar with the term triage means that you do an assessment of a patient to decide whether that patient needs immediate treatment, whether it needs later treatment, whether they are beyond all hope, so treatment is going to be no good. And this is very important if you're dealing with a situation like a terrorist attack where there's been an explosion and you've got casualties. You need to save lives. You need to be able to concentrate on those people who need quick interventions and need rapid treatment to save their lives. And so there's a process that paramedics use, and they have to do a series of tests. Has a person's are their eyes open? Are they breathing? Have they got a heartbeat? So all of these things, and the way that they train traditionally is either through the use of mannequins, in other words, dummies, that they do these tests on, or actors pretending to be injured in an incident. And so they go through the triage routine. So this research project was to assess whether video games technology was more effective as a learning tool than traditional methods. So Blitz Games developed this triage game called Dying Dave. And the way that it worked was that they simulated the after effects of an explosion in a city centre. And the city centre was based on Leamington Spa, which is where Blitz Games were based. So what you see in the game are casualties, different casualties lying in the street, animated with realistic wounds. And what the idea of the game is that the paramedic had to quickly go through the triage routine with each casualty and do it accurately and make the correct triage decision to save as many lives as possible. And so the way they did the research project was that they assessed traditional training on 50 paramedics using mannequins, and assessed how accurate and effective they were in the triage. And they tested another control group of 50 patients using the video game. And the outcome of that research project was that they proved that video game-based learning for scenarios like this were more effective than the traditional methods. And the reason that people quoted, and again, this is where research surveys, interviews, etc., are important as part of the debriefing process. So they ask all the paramedics, what did you think of the video game? Was it better than working with mannequins? What were the good and bad points about it? And the common theme through that research was that they found the simulation, a video game, more effective because they were more deeply immersed. They believed in the situation, whereas if they were working with mannequins and actors, it was more like pretending and acting. So that was another research project, and over a period of time at the Serious Games Institute, we were involved in a number of European projects that involved research to do with games technologies and health outcomes, usually to do with training and education. So after I finished my time at the Serious Games Institute, I went back to working for myself, and this is where I started on my own personal research project. And that's to do with understanding the impact of wearable technologies on health. And how this came about completely by accident, really, a set of circumstances. Some friends of mine, if you want to call them friends, told me that I was getting fat, and I was worried about me. In fact, one friend who saw me in a play said, "Dave, where did you get your stomach padding from?" And I wasn't wearing any. And then I met another academic friend in Covent Garden in London, and she said, "I think you've got some Russian blood in you because you look like a Russian bear. You should have a DNA test to see what your genetic origins are." So I took a DNA test with 23andme.com, and it showed that I didn't have any genetic origin from Russia. But what it did show was that I got a 50% chance of getting diabetes too as I got older. And finding out about some wearable technologies a short while later, I decided to gamify my own health. I decided to see if using a wearable device would make a difference to my health. So 10 years ago, I got one of the early wearable devices called Jawbone Up, which measured my steps. It measured my sleep. It measured also the calories that I was consuming. And within 3 months, I'd lost 21 kilos. And so over the last 10 years, my personal research project is understanding the impact of wearable technologies as they've evolved over that period of time, and how that modified my behavior, and how it helps with understanding what the key things are about maintaining your health and having a healthy lifestyle. So I walk 5 miles every day, and I've done that for the last 10 years. And I have a number of different wearable devices that I use to measure that. And I collect the data. The data is collected on my smartphone. And this is where artificial intelligence starts to come in. That data is analyzed and provides me with different prompts. So I would like now just to show you maybe a few demonstrations of projects and situations that I've been involved in, where you can gain some learning outcomes, gain some research outcomes. But I think it's also interesting from an education point of view of the use of, I know Skip's very enthusiastic about this, of 360-degree technology. So what I'd like to do is to share my screen and play you a video of an NHS innovation event in Northampton. This is some years ago, and as part of this exercise, people were sat in groups of about 7 or 8 people around a table, and they had as a team to build a freestanding structure from spaghetti sticks and masking tape. And they were given about 10 minutes to build this freestanding structure, and the table that got the tallest structure became the winner. So I was on a table with some nurses and other people, and I set up a 360-degree camera. And if you like, this is my research project, to see whether recording people in 360 degrees doing a games channel, whether there are any learning outcomes that you could gain from that. So I'd like to try and share the video of that with you, and this is where we're testing technology a little bit, so I'll go into share. So can you see that on your screen now, Skip?
Yep, it's very clear, David. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning of the video and just start. So here we are, we're sat around a table, and this is at the start of the exercise. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I just want to show you this 360-degree video recording. So I'm going to play it.
One thing I would suggest is that if it's going to be freestanding, it's got to be stable. So having a tripod as a base would be quite a good
So
getting it to be.
I'm rotating around to look at other people in my team.
You'd have the three and the marshmallow on the top to hold them, wouldn't you?
I want you to look at the lady to my right.
If you start making it too high, it's going to be unstable, isn't it?
And you
Yes,
notice
so I think you need a solid tripod.
where the people I'm talking to. I don't know what you gained from that, but what I gained from that was about my own behavior. As you notice, from the beginning, the lady on my right was totally bored, and she wasn't involved at all. And I was really, without being conscious of it, just talking to the people on my left. But as the game developed, the lady on my right got more and more animated, more and more involved, and in the end, it turned out to be a very good team effort. So that was really a project which the outcome was to try and assess leadership styles. Who was leading the table, who was involved, who sat back, what contribution. So it was really an exercise that benefited from debriefing, where you watch that again and analyze your own behavior to understand the consequences of that. I'm just going to stop for a minute at this point to see if there's any questions from what I've said so far.
Thanks, David. I'll see if any of the students have a question, but I've got a couple notes on some observations, and if they don't, but we are encouraging, active participation from everyone. So, if you're a little bit shy right now, by the end, try to see if you can think of, any questions that you may have for David about research methods in healthcare, maybe that's specific, to the dissertation projects that you've got coming up, or the essay that you're writing, on your research methodology now. Any comments or questions from the group? Not yet? No? No? Okay. So David, let me jump in because I really like. Oh, am I in the picture now? Where's my camera? Oh, there we go. I really liked your project where you were talking about body language, because we've been talking a little bit about interviews as a technique, as a tool for gathering data. And last week we did a little simulation where I did a walkthrough on an online doctor's kind of healthcare evaluation. And then the students gave me some questions. Now, if we're in a face-to-face situation, you can do kind of body language, but in a traditional teams like right now, if this was a talking head, just a close-up of my head, there wouldn't really be a lot of body language. But having a full body video of me right now, that gives you an opportunity to see my body language a little bit, or that 360 camera that you used in the other video sample there was effective to see body language. So are there any other kind of tools or techniques that you could say that might enhance or help to make the interviewee, the respondent, feel a little bit more calm or a little bit more at ease before you start jumping in right into the question? So go ahead, David, if you have any suggestions on that.
Well, yes, I agree with you. It is more difficult when you're in an online environment, but even so, the body language still is important, even in online. So things like maintaining eye contact, not checking on your phone to see what's going on, because all of those are big temptations when you're online. And in fact, one of the difficulties online is if people have got their cameras switched off, they may not even be there. So it is quite difficult from a body language point of view. But you can probably help by just the choice of questions and the language that you use when you're doing an interview. We has to be respectful, and the key thing is, I think, with any kind of interview, whether it is face to face or whether it's online, is to get the other person talking. So ask open-ended questions. Ask questions that don't simply require yes or no. Ask open-ended questions to give people a chance to talk about it. And don't be afraid to leave pauses, because pauses are often a way of encouraging participation. I took part in something called T-group analysis when I was doing my diploma in management studies. And this was another really exercise in human behavior and relationships. And the whole point about this weekend away was to try and understand your effect on other people. Now, this technique has been discredited to a certain extent, and I understand. I don't know quite why, but it involved a series of exercises which took different forms, but they all culminated in people sitting round the table, so in a circle, with a facilitator and a moderator in the middle. And it was the moderator's job to try and stimulate conversation. And silence played an important part in all of this, because with any kind of group of people, if you're all sat around in a circle in the same room, particularly if it's a relatively small room, at some point someone will say something because they can't stand the silence, and that leads to a conversation and a discussion. And it helps people to understand, if the as the conversation follows, how they are seen by other people. And in one sense, and I'll just show you the impact that it had on me, as part of the exercise, before we went into the round circle room, we had to choose one other person. We had to go with one other person in private and talk about the thing that we most disliked about ourselves. So I went off with someone in the group, and I couldn't really think of a lot, but I had observed that very often in team or group situations, I would sit quietly listening and observing, until there was a point where I could say something which made me look good. If you see what I mean, summarizing what people had said, but basically it was not risking saying something stupid, just listening and observing and coming in with something which I thought might make me look good, or might not be stupid, if you see what I mean. And then after this exercise and one-on-one, which was okay, talking to another person, being open with them, going back into the group, and each of us then had to say the same thing to the whole group. And my palms were sweating. I was really, really nervous about saying this, and the group discussed it, and they said, I think what the problem is that you are risk averse. You don't want to put yourself at risk for fear of looking stupid, and that's why you do it. So maybe you should try taking a risk where you attempt something that you are worried that you're not going to be able to succeed at. And so how it manifested itself with me was, my hobby is acting. I love acting, stage work, and I auditioned for the lead role in a musical called Pajama Game. And I don't really have a confident singing voice, so I really put myself at risk there. And I couldn't have chosen a worse musical, because the music was so difficult. Just and I dreaded every night going on stage, because I knew that my voice wasn't up to it. And
did you get the part, David? That's what we want to know.
No, I got the part, and I had a week's run, and I really suffered every single night doing this. And then like everybody who acts, you wait to get the newspaper the next week to see the review of the play. And what the reviewer said was that my singing was eccentric. So I imagine that the reviewer had gone through this thesaurus to find something that wasn't too insulting. That was. But yeah, that was.
But yeah, to take that back to the context of the interview, because I think it's interesting, how you're talking about like the logistics, for example, when we are planning to do our essay for this module, they've got to write 3,000 words about the research methods and tools they're going to use. And we don't want you to just say, I'm going to do an interview. Okay. You have to think then, okay, go into the detail. Is that interview going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be online? Right? If it's online, what tools are you going to use? If it's face to face, where are you sitting? Now, David's been talking about building that rapport, getting the person to feel comfortable, relaxed, so like he went through with you to share, how he went through the emotions of talking, about something that could be possibly, quite sensitive, right? Are you going to be sitting directly across from them, like if you're doing a job interview? Or are you going to be sitting next to them side by side? So maybe they feel a little bit, less threatened. These are the kind of things that we want you to be thinking about for your essay. Don't just say, oh, yeah, interview. Go into those steps, okay, into that finer detail, like David's sharing with us, that comprise that whole interview strategy that you're going to be using. Sorry for jumping in, David. I just wanted to put it in context to our assessment. You carry on if you have any more examples, or we can get some more questions if you like.
Well, there is a question that Manisha has asked me in the chat, and just read it for you. Thank you very much for your talk today. You mentioned the potential benefits of gamifying health. Were there any issue or challenges that have been brought up about using gamification in healthcare contexts? Could it be used unethically, maybe unintentionally? How would we ensure that there's good design and design research? Well, yes, in healthcare, there are a lot of ethical issues to consider when you're doing healthcare research, particularly gamification techniques, because gamification, in my view, is very individual. What works for one person, what might be motivating for one person, is not necessarily motivating for another person. And that's likely to have some implications when you're trying to analyze the results, because everybody is different. And that's one of the big challenges in healthcare research. The way that you try to address that is to make sure that there's a level playing field. Everything is consistent, and there's nothing in your research project which disadvantages or gives some advantage to different people. The data that you collect within healthcare research is also extremely important, that it is anonymized and it is secure. I'm actually taking part in a healthcare research project myself, and I certainly recommend that any of you, all of you actually, if you get the opportunity, will think about joining it. And if you Google it, it's called Our Future Health, and it's an NHS project, and it's the biggest single healthcare research project that the NHS has ever undertaken. And they're aiming to get up to 5 million people to take part in this project. So if you go Google it on the, if you Google it, Our Future Health, you'll see that you can actually register for it. And when you register for it, you consent that your data will be used, your protected data, anonymized data will be used to improve the health of the whole population. So I registered for it, and it's only about 3 weeks ago that I went for what you describe as a health MOT. So I went over to a station, and loads of other people were there as well, in a private booth with a nurse. So they took all my healthcare parameters, my blood pressure, etc., my weight, my body mass index, all the indicators of health that doctors use. So they got a record of that. And so they also took a blood test where that was used to get a more accurate reading on my blood glucose. So I think that's a good example of a well-designed research project. The research that I'm doing on my own personal health, which is quite relevant, and that is the key thing. If you're doing something on wearables, for example, what is the impact of wearables on people's healthcare? You need to be able to give everyone a device which is consistent and accurate in measuring. One of the problems with doing healthcare research with wearables is that all wearables are different. And even those who are close to medical grade don't give you, or are likely to give you, exactly the same answers a doctor would give you in his surgery. So a healthcare research project using wearables, for example, you would need to be sure that everybody got exactly the same device, and that device was consistent in the way that it measured its data.
David, sorry to jump in, but can you give an example of wearable, or do you have any devices handy that you could show us?
Well, yeah, sure. I've got three.
Oh.
I use the two devices. I have a Fitbit Sense. I have a one from China that is equivalent to an Apple smartwatch that measures blood glucose levels and a range of things. But the ones I'm really enthusiastic about is the one I've got on my finger. And I've been using this for 4 weeks now. It's a ring. And it's a ring that has a battery life that's longer. It's about 4 or 5 days battery life, so I don't have to charge it. That's a big problem with a lot of wearables, is that they need charging virtually every day. Whereas this ring measures a lot of healthcare characteristics. And it's got a long battery life. So if you're thinking about the technology, I get mine from China direct. So I road test these, and I'm road testing this at the moment, and it has some very good mobile application associated with it. And with all of these devices, the big issue that all of the mobile applications, they try desperately to avoid giving you prescriptive advice because they don't want to give you advice that is inappropriate for you as an individual. So they won't tell you to run more, they won't tell you to exercise more. What they will tend to do is to point you to a website which gives advice, like if you see your blood pressure going up, then they will give you advice on things you can do, but they won't be prescriptive. So those are the devices I use. I don't know whether it's interest, but I did a presentation at a conference recently on digital twins and wearable technologies and AI for future health, and I thought that might be of interest to show some of the advances in AI when it comes to answering questions. Actually, whilst you were setting up for this event, I actually created a digital twin of myself, talking about to giving a description of critical incidents methodologies, all using AI. Can I share my
Well, while you're getting
but...
that set up, David, I'm glad you mentioned that. We didn't pre-plan this, by the way, everyone. This is quite serendipitous. But David, part of the assessment that they're going to be passing in is to have in the appendix section an AI reference. Okay, so guys, don't forget that, along with your reference section of literature. We want you to do a search in an AI generator in order to get some type of reference text from the AI agent. All right, and we'll talk more about that if people aren't clear. but basically it would be that you would ask the artificial intelligence software of your choice a question, and then you're going to plug that in as a reference in your reference section. All right. So we're trying to get you to start thinking a little bit about, as healthcare researchers, what's already here. This isn't next generation. This is already here. So David's all set to give us a demo. Are you real, David, right now, or are you artificial?
I am real, but I'm going to show you some of my digital twins, and I'll show you how intelligent my digital twins are. So maybe if I just share that with you now and just go through it very quickly. Let's see. So I want a window. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yep, it's on the screen. Yep.
Okay, so I'll go through it. I'll go through it at lightning speed because well, it only took me about 10 minutes anyway, so I'll go through it very, very quickly. So these are the topics that I discussed. It was to explain to people what digital twins are and how they're being used in different aspects of healthcare. So here are some of my digital twins. You asked the question. These are AI generated images of me using a smartphone. And I've got an example of how you actually do that. But digital twins are not just visual representations of human beings. Digital twins are used in many different sectors. They're used in city planning, for example, duplicate models of cities. They're used in manufacturing, an example of the interior of a car there, and they're used in medicine for education. So get on to the next one, and particularly these days for surgery, because one of the problems that we've touched on before, every human being is different, and although our organs might all look the same, they're different sizes, and so for a surgeon that represents a problem. So one of the ways of making sure that surgeons are as effective as possible is to create a digital twin from an MRI scan or some kind of scan that will give the surgeon detail about the personal location of different organs and any problems like tumors, etc., where they're located, to help them to be more effective. And these days,
sorry, David, can I just jump in for a moment, because this is interesting, because when you came to Bournemouth before at the other campus, because we're in the Poole campus, but when you were at the one near the train station, did you get a chance to see the anatomy table that they have in the library there?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay, because we've been talking about that, where it's essentially, like you just said, it's the size of a person, and on that anatomy table, they can have all of the different systems, and you can strip away the bones or the skin or whatever, and actually dissect into it. But that's just a generic person. So you're saying that they'll scan an individual, and it will have that person's individual anatomy.
Yeah, exactly, and it goes further than that now, because the latest techniques, actually, when the surgeon is performing the operation, often with the assistance of a robot, they have the internal organs overlaid over the human body. So the person is lying there on the operating table, and the surgeon can see inside them without cutting. So it's like mixed reality to do the operation. So they're quite important in personalized healthcare. In surgery is one example, but also based on genetics and DNA. Now, one of the problems with a lot of research when you're developing new drugs is that they have to do them in vitro. In other words, in a laboratory with samples of tissue and what have you. But nowadays, because of new developments in genetics and modeling and DNA, etc., they are able to predict the effects of drugs on individual people based on their DNA. And that's very important, because one of the problems with the aging society is that people respond differently to different kinds of drugs. And so you get what's called comorbidity, where people are taking a cocktail of drugs when they get older and they don't agree with them. So it leads to further health problems. And using these simulations and digital twins of DNA samples is something that helps personalize healthcare, but also helps to make the development of new drugs much quicker and more effective. So in case of health and well-being, these are actually screenshots from my 3 devices. So going from the left, I've got Fitbit, Sense, this China device, and the ring that I wear. So all of the data is collected there. It not only informs me, but the thing about it that's important to me for the future, and this is where ethics come into it, is that a lot of people are afraid that if they share their healthcare data, it's going to be used against them. So if you've got a genetically related medical problem, you might not be able to get insurance, or it might be more expensive, or an employer might not employ you because you've got an underlying health problem. But for me, the important thing is, and this is how I would try and sell the idea of wearables to people, is the fact that if I had a medical problem and became unconscious and couldn't speak, and I was rushed into hospital, if my data was available to the clinician, I'm likely to get a better outcome than going there and having to rely on a doctor to take measurements and have none of my personal history. Having all of my personal history on mobile devices and sharing what I'm willing to share could actually save my life at some point in the future. So, I think this is where these devices start to come into their own, providing the security and non-discriminatory aspects of it can be addressed. So, these are some examples of different kinds of wearable technologies that these 2 devices, the ring and the watch, are the ones that I use, but there are also other devices that can be used as patches, for example, on your heart or on your chest, can be used to detect atrial fibrillation. And now it goes actually beyond that. You can have wearable technologies that actually do something to correct a medical problem. So if you have diabetes, it's possible to have an insulin pump linked to a device which measures your glucose levels in your body. And if you get a problem as a result of your diabetes, it will actually activate an insulin pump and give you some insulin when you need it most. So we're seeing the way in which these healthcare technologies are moving beyond just simple diagnostics into therapeutics and helping you to avoid clinical problems. So these are examples of my digital twins that I've shown before, and what I've done is to set these digital twins and animate them. So that's my digital twin with a background that was created in a mobile app called PhotoLeap. And if I go on to the next screen, I'll show you how I can take that digital twin and turn it into another twin and animate it. So this is going into selecting my image to begin with and putting in a mobile app called PhotoLeap. And PhotoLeap will transform that picture into another picture based on, at the moment it's showing neon. So that's an example of another video twin. I don't really like that. I don't like the color of my hair or my outfit. So what the video is going through now is to showing you other alternatives. So I'll choose something else. Space. Yeah, so that's my spaceman image. I quite like that one. And the point about showing you this is that I can create someone's digital twin, give them artificial intelligence generated text, and get them in different languages, and get them to deliver that text in the foreign language using their avatar. And I can do that in under 5 minutes. This video that I'm showing, it is less than 5 minutes, but it actually could be a lot quicker if I hadn't gone through to choose a different kinds of avatars. So it's first going through avatars and then selecting an avatar, which you'll see that I save, and then you'll go and you'll see what else it does. Choosing my final one is a cartoon headshot. So that's how my 4 avatars were created. So now I go on to the next stage. And this is where I'm getting a lot of noise.
Yeah, sorry, David, we might have some background noise here.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is the final bit where I take my avatar and I get it to talk, and I use a web-based program called Yepic. And you see, all I need to do is to choose the avatar that I want to talk, and then I load that up. And then what I need to do is to give it a name. I wanted to say Rockstar, but predictive text changed that to Rickstar. So I create my digital human, and then I need to give it the text that I want to use. So I put some text in, and it will generate the. And I'm going to skip that one, and let's see, just show you what the outcome of that is. Stop that.
We see the lips moving, but we're not hearing the sound.
Okay. Well,
the video you played before, we did hear the sound.
Did you? Oh, yes. What do you mean, the AI
the 360
video?
The
360 video. I think there's something about Teams, which is different to Zoom. It doesn't give you an option to share when I'm playing an application on my machine. It doesn't give you the option to share the video, but you'll have to take my word for it that I'm speaking in Turkish.
Okay.
I'm speaking in Turkish. So can you just excuse me 1 minute? I just need to pop to the toilet. Yeah.
Yep, no worries. We'll pause this the recording because I think we're just about ready to finish up anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I will. Yeah. I did want to show you me describing what critical incident methodology was in 2 different languages. But I think as we've run out of time, I will actually send you the videos that
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
you can show to them. But I just want to thank you for.
Well, shall we just give everybody say a 10-minute break?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I think my students are getting antsy as well. So we'll
okay.
come back at 12:50.
12:50. Okay, and then we're just 10 minutes and so
Yeah,
okay.
just finish it off.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.